after that, once I started coming out of prison, what started to happen after that, I started to end up in the psychiatric hospital. So I ended up starting to get sectioned, locked up, secure units, stuff like that kind of thing. So I was sitting in places where really I was in a hopeless situation. My problem was crack cocaine, my problem was heroin, my problem was alcohol, my problem was drugs. And then I just continuously kept making them wrong choices over and over and over again. And eventually what I got to the places where I started to clean up. But where I used to start to turn up in lots of different shelters, homeless places, lots of things started to happen in my life. And then what eventually, I ended up meeting somebody at a railway station. Her name was Karen, and she was a prostitute. So she used to prostitute her body out, and then we used to go out and kind of go thieving. We worked as a team. She went to Holloway Prison. I'd take parcels to Holloway Prison for her. I'd go to kind of like Belmarsh, Scrubs, or High Point, Wayland, wherever it was, and they would come along and she'd bring parcels to me there. And we were like a double act. But she felt pregnant, and when she felt pregnant, what actually happened, she gave birth to my son, but he was 8 weeks premature, and he was born a drug addict, and the social services took him away and put him into care. So once he ended up in care, he was kind of like, I just wanted to be a dad. Like, I never had a dad when I was growing up. Yeah, but I wanted to be a dad. So like, when they took the summer rule, I was absolutely devastated, you know, in my own train of thought. But what happened after a period of time, she scored some drugs from somewhere and she ended up dying. And she died at 27 years of age. And really, like, I can remember, I was sitting at a railway station and I was devastated in my mind because I couldn't transform my mind because, like, I really loved her, but it was just a chaotic relationship. But the drugs and everything to do started to wreck it, and I was just becoming more and more zombified. Like my train of thought was happening, I was getting in the worst situation. And what eventually happened is like, I just kind of like, there was a lady called Janet. And Janet used to come to the railway station with sandwiches and that. And like, she used to bring us drinks and things, and she used to really show me kindness and care, but like, I really couldn't really understand why she would do that, because like, I just thought to myself, like, what's the point, you know? I'll be doing this since the age of whatever. I can't get out of this situation, I'm knackered. And like, but she just kept giving me a bit of hope, and she kept coming along, and one day she turned around and she said to me, do you know what? You know, there is a different way out of all this situation. And I listened to her for a minute, and what she said to her, she said, yeah, there is a way of being able to get out of this situation. And I just, for one minute, I started to believe that maybe something could be a little bit different. Maybe something could just change a little bit, you know? And then when I say about changing a little bit, what started to happen to me is a set of circumstances. So that's what I used to look like. So that's me at 30 years of age, and this is me at 50 years of age. So this is me at 30 years of age, and this is me at 50 years of age. So it's the transforming change which has gone on in my life from how I used to be to where I am now. So what had gone on in that change, things have started to turn around, and I started to take on a new meaning. Things started to happen. So the supernatural change from the old to the new. And that's really what we're talking about, how we used to be to what we used to be right now. And then the stuff with all this, it just goes on and on and on and on and on. So this is me at King's College Hospital. So when I used to start to die and all that kind of stuff, I was in King's College Hospital. So what started to happen? Because of all the alcohol that I was drinking, I used to drink loads of cider, and I used to drink lots of other stuff as well. And what started to happen, it started to damage all my liver. So my liver started to get damaged, so my eyes started to go. And then before my eyes started to go, I got jaundice. And when I started to get jaundice, yeah, I used to cough up like blood and all that kind of thing, wee out blood, because my organs started to shut down. So they took me into King's College Hospital. And when they took me in the hospital, they started to give us a load of kind of like medication and all that. But my problem was I ended up with hepatitis C from the sturdy stuff, and then started to change my life. And then I ended up being in touch.
How are you?
Things turned around. So life started to take on a new meaning. And then What happened? This is intensive care. So I died 5 times. So that's kind of like lots of different things, cut out accidents and everything like that. Been with people and we've seen all sorts of things. You know the underbelly of life? You know the underbelly of life. You know where life sort of like, there's an underbelly of it all. There's a current. So that's what I started to find in situations. So seeing being cut out, intensive care in our hospitals. But what started to happen for me, this lady, she started speaking to me, and I got two people took me in. A 19-year-old and a 20-year-old. They took me in off the street. They never asked how much or where I lived or what I did. They just took me in off the street. And they put me up in their house. And where I stayed in that house, life started to rebuild. Things started to change in my life. And things started to move forward. And there, I got reunited with my son. Like, I always wanted to be a dad. Yeah, and when I got reunited with my son, yeah, I actually started to be able to speak to him and be able to, but they wouldn't let me see him unless they drug test me. So they had to test me to make sure that I had all the drugs in the system and all that. And what I was, because I was on all the streets from the doctor, I was getting the pills here, the pills there. I was just sort of running from one disaster to the next, really. Just popping the next thing, taking the next thing, and just moving on from there. Always waiting for the next handout, going collecting. I just didn't see anything more in my life apart from that. And then what happened, the people who took me in, they were Jesus people. And they took me in off the street and they started speaking to me about the love of God. Now I didn't really want to hear all that. Yeah, but like all I did, I sort of like just sat in. Just the kind of person I am, I would just adapt to the situation. So I'd turn up somewhere, I'd just adapt, I'd get what I get from there, and then I'd go on my merry way. That was me, that's how I lived my life. I'd go from one place to the next. Come on in, sir, I need to get you a chair. But like what we did, we just go from one disaster to the next. So how do? I would adapt to my way of thinking. And by adapting my way of thinking, I would adjust myself to wherever I needed to be. So then I would be there, and once I was there, I'd stay in that situation. But by staying in that situation, what started to happen? Things started to move, things started to change. But they kept talking to me about the love of God. And when they spoke to me about the love of God, what happened was that I just sort of had my eyes open to something. And when my eyes opened up, I started to see that there was something different. And when I started to see there was something different, I started to say, Lord, when you come to my life. So I used to pray a lot. Yeah, I used to pray that I'd get the drink down my throat, pray that I'd get the money, pray that I wouldn't get caught, pray that I'd get out of the hospital, pray that I'm in the cells, that I ain't going to get laid over 5, 6, 7 years, whatever it was going to be, whatever I've been up to. And what had happened was like, someone didn't always pray, but I didn't really realise the reason why I was praying. But what they started to talk to me about, they said, if you pray from your heart, God help me, that was my prayer all the time, God help me, get me out of this situation, God help me, get me out of this situation, God help me. And what started to happen is these people come, and when these people come, they were in the 20s, this young girl started to look at me, and when she looked at me, she said to me, you can live in my house. And we looked at these teenage kids, yeah, and they were like, and they looked at me, and I was 30 odd years of age, and they said, come on, come and live out. I thought, what? They didn't ask me how many times I've been sexual. They didn't ask me how many times I've been in prison. They didn't ask me about all the different things that I've been up to. They just said, come and live in the house. So I went round their house. I stayed in their house and all that. But when they first took me in the house, I looked around because I thought to myself, what am I doing? I still had that mad thinking in the head. So when I walked in the house, I saw they had a telly, DVD player, all that. I was going to chore it for them. Because that's the way I think. Because I used to always be stealing stuff, needing things all the time. But then when I actually stood there, she turned around and she said to me, welcome. And I looked at her, and she took me upstairs. And when she took me upstairs, there was a bedroom. And I went in the bedroom, you know the first thing I smelled when I walked in the bedroom? Washing powder. This room was all clean, white walls, all painted and all that. And I walked in there and I sat down, and when I sat down, I looked in the wardrobe, there was a load of clobber in there, like better clobber than what I had on it. It was like a charity clothes. I had all the NHS t-shirt, NHS pants, NHS slippers, handouts all the time. I was always getting handouts from someone. And then I walked in there, and when I walked in there, I looked around, there was a deodorant stick on the side. Now, I was a clean person. I'd wash myself and make sure I was clean, but there was times when I got dirty where I just was like running from one place to the other. You know, I was in a nightmare situation. All I was looking for was one thing, one gill, whatever it was. And then what I did, I rolled up and I looked there and I turned around, this big white bed, and I jumped on it. And when I jumped on the bed, I sat there like a kid, felt really comfortable for me. Then I said, God help me. God help me. Just help me, God. I need your help. And what happened, something started to change. And then when it started to change, things started to turn around. And from there onwards, I started to build a relationship. I came down the stairs and John and Tamsin were there, these young kids sitting at the table. And they said, do you want something to eat? And I said to them, yeah. And I sat down, and when I sat down, he said to me, put your hand out, Andy. And I put my hand out like this, and when I put my hand out like that, he put a set of front door keys to his house in my hand. Yeah, he just said, welcome. And I grabbed the keys, and as I grabbed the keys, I sat there, and that was over 20 years ago. Never had to go back to prison, never been sectioned, never been in any of that stuff. And what was actually done on there, in that moment, there was some sobriety.